Everyone. So today we're going to talk about why do we become isolated and fearful of authority figures, and how trauma leads to us hiding, shrinking, and becoming small, fearful people. So, when we grow up in dysfunctional families with immature people, our families don't feel safe enough for us to feel comfortable in being our true self, in expressing our true self. So, we or children who grow up in trauma, in dysfunctional families or traumatic conditions, they isolate, they hide, they bury their true feelings, they deny themselves because they have to become who the caretakers want the child to become. In turn, the child abandons their true self and becomes shapeshifts and becomes somebody who can survive the dysfunction and accept the dysfunction as the truth, as the right thing. So this is how children deny their truth and what they think is right and learn to accept as somebody else's truth as their own truth. And we hide to protect ourselves. So this is how we learn how to isolate and hide, how to become fearful. So become fearful of other people and then isolate and hide. So if we're the premise behind this is, if you hide, then you are safe. If you deny your truth, then you are accepted, right? So we don't allow such people who grow up in traumatic, dysfunctional families, they don't allow other people to get too close because it might hurt them. They might get criticized. So when we grow up in a traumatic, dysfunctional family, the message is that you are not accepted as your true self. So change yourself. You are not enough. Maybe you're too much. And if you come out as your true self, then usually you will get punished and criticized and harmed. So the nature of the child or the person who's growing up in that dysfunctional environment, their nature becomes to hide their true self in order to in order to survive. Now, how does somebody hide or isolate their true self? By denying their true feelings. So first we deny what we're seeing, we deny our true feelings, and then we dissociate from our truth and then walk in acceptance and compliance of the other truth that somebody else is asking you to believe. So we isolate ourselves and we continue to fear people. Why? Because what we've seen growing up in such families is that the truth is not what we see. We have to accept somebody else's truth. And if we don't, then we are criticized, punished, judged, maybe even rejected. So in order to survive, we accept somebody else's truth. But this causes a separation within us. So people who grow up in families that are dysfunctional suppress their own truth, and this causes a conflict within them. It causes a separation within them, so they have a false self existing and living life and learning new skills and people pleasing and perfectionism and doing all the things. And the true self that is meant to be is hidden or suppressed or depressed because of fear of criticism, rejection, punishment, right? So this pattern starts in childhood, but it continues in adulthood. And that's what we have to manage, that once we are adults, we have to realize that we are not powerless, helpless children who cannot express our truth. If we express our truth, we will not be ostracized, rejected, or punished or criticized. But the fear that our inner child carries, because our inner child is stuck in past trauma, our inner child still believes that they will not be able to survive, or they will be condemned if they spoke their truth. This causes separation of self and creates loneliness and exaggerates fear, and it cripples our ability to be in the world and to express ourselves. So this loss of trust in ourselves and other people, this loss of true self that happens in childhood continues through adulthood. So an adult child who has lived through the traumatic, dysfunctional, immature families, they tend to have two personas, one that is suppressed deep within the true self, and the false self that comes out to live and to interact with others, and is very careful in gauging others, hyper vigilant, and does not express the true self. So this is why we are scared of people, because we're scared that A, they might be able to see our truth, B, they may reject our false self, or they may reject our true self. So we start to feel like an imposter, because we know that we're not living as our true self, we are living as false self. And then this false self, believe it or not, as you may see every day, this false self, the people pleasing self that goes along to get along, the compliant self, the perfectionist self, this has so much value in society, and these qualities are celebrated. So our false self keeps on getting that validation from society and gives us more incentive to not speak our truth, to not be our true self, to keep denying our true self. So the false self, the hero, the martyr, or whatever role was developed as a result of trauma, this false self is the one that we have to maintain. To maintain this false authority, this false self, we unconsciously dose ourselves with adrenaline to continue with that fear, continue with that anger, with that emotional pain, right? So to maintain the false self comes all these painful feelings that come with living as a false self. So in order to maintain the false self in society, in workplace, in relationships, we have to feed it with the same emotional pain and anger so that it continues to operate. Because if we drop the false self and our true self comes out, then we don't know how, people around us will not know how, this is how to deal with us, or how they will suddenly say, oh, you've changed. This is why people on healing journey hear so many times, oh, you've changed, because they drop the false armor one by one by one, and they become their true self that stands in their innate power. And when we drop that false self, we drop the people pleaser, the perfectionism, the always there for others, the manipulation with overloving, overgiving, the taking care of other people, then living in denial, all these qualities that are because of having to survive in a dysfunctional families. This false self has all these qualities: living in denial, living for other people, being hyper vigilant, always pleasing other people, making sure everything's going good, but secretly having to feed self with the same type of negative emotion so that we can keep up with the false pretenses, so that we don't suddenly come up and enjoy and speak our truth. So this is why we hide from other people, because we're living a false self and we're not sure if we can ever be truthful. And then when confronted by adult situation, we tend to regress to a stage in our childhood where we were punished for speaking up, where we were hurt for speaking our truth. So that's why we are so scared of authority figures, because those figures represent the painful, the hurtful authority figures of the past. And that's why we isolate, because every time an authority figure reminds us of the abusive or a bully authority figure of the past, our inner child feels as though it's going to happen again, as though we are back to being false self, we're back to being, but we will be punished if we speak our truth. So I hope this helps you understand why do trauma survivors isolate, and why are trauma survivors scared of living their truth, why are trauma survivors scared of other people, and why are trauma survivors especially scared of authority figures. So the journal questions for this trait, for this isolation and afraid of authority figures, ask yourself these questions. When have I been isolated and afraid of other people? How does my body react when I'm in fear? Who brings that nervous system state of activation and fear, and who do I isolate from? Has isolation become my comfort? Is that my go-to? List all the people in your life today that remind you of that authority figure, that fearful, judgmental, critical, punishing authority figure. And then in your journal, write down, how do I cover that up? What is my false self that is created so that I can operate as a successful, healthy human being? So what is my false self? And then why is my true self scared or intimidated by people? Was I bullied? Was I dominated? And then now, in present tense, can I console my inner child and tell them that they are safe, that the wise, loving parent is there to take care of them? And then list all the tools and support and wisdom that you have access to, that you can call on when you feel fearful of other people. Who can you talk to? Who can you journal? If you're scared and isolating, how do I come out of that? And when do I heal? How do I heal myself? How do I move on from, how do I resolve my fear of other people and dread of isolation? What has stopped me from why do I, another really good question to look at is, why do I put other people on a pedestal? Why do I think that they have more power, and why do I think that they will hurt me? Why do I think that people in authority and in power will hurt me now? And why do I put some people at a much higher position than my own self? Why do I not look at all human beings the same despite whatever position or money or status they hold? And then realistically, are my fears realistic? Am I looking at my fears in the most realistic manner? And then am I doing anything to resolve those fears? So I hope this trait is so clear to you. I hope you can do the work to understand why and when you became scared of people and authority figures, and when do you isolate, when do you hide, and what can you do now to change that? My hope for you is that you come out of isolation, that you start to interact with people, that you heal that inner child inside you that is so suppressed and depressed, that you call on them and you show them how safe it is for them to be now. So as you do the journal questions and understand yourself and your background and where you are now, and you communicate that to your inner family, you will see that you move out of isolation. You're not unrealistically afraid of other people anymore, that you are able to face people and you are able to resolve your isolation.